structure of research presentation. This year, we'll be able to do two main things, which was how to formulate a researchable topic, and then we talked about the concept of structure and content. We touched a little bit on scope and variables. So today we're going to be going deeper. We're going to be going into mainly chapter 1 and 2, what chapter 1 and 2 entails. Then with the look of things, we're going to be wrapping up tomorrow, not today. So we're going to be having one extra day. But my objective for today is to immerse you into what chapter 1 and 2 entails. A little bit on chapter 3, but if you cannot go into chapter 3, just like I shared the material I've shared, I don't know if everyone about that, but if you didn't get it, I'm going to share it to us in our mail material for variable. So I might do likewise for the methodology. It's important just to my goal is to of course we cannot cover everything. The rules about research is I can try my best to give us a reflection about it, to give us how it's supposed to look like, what's expected in terms of the standard of the philosophy. And the formula for a researchable topic is independent construct plus dependent construct plus a case study equals to a researchable topic. And the second module I covered, it dealt with the concept of structure and establish that your structure for your work is the organization of your chapterization. It's what makes your work to be right. So anytime they want to mark your work as an academic, first thing we notice is your structure. Your structure must be well aligned for any reader to want to be interested in whatever you are writing. If your structure is not good looking, most likely your work might not be good. It might not be attractive to anybody to do. So structure is very, very important. Okay. Content is fleshing your work out. Developing your chapter. That's all. All right. These are our learning objectives for today. Nothing to talk about chapter 1. Write it clear and logical background. So problems that justify your topic. Develop research objectives, questions, and topics that align perfectly. Identify who benefits from your study, and then define the scope of your study and all that. So that is the learning objective for this particular. So chapter 1, basically chapter 1 is just I was working on also was talking about saying the making introduction is important because a lot of times I know have time. A lot of times you might not have time to go through. You might not have time to go through your entire work, but you want to be able to read your introduction and have an idea of what your work is all about. So if you now find your work interesting, you will now try to go. That's why your introduction is very, very important, especially your background. Your background is something to touch on. The core thing you want to talk about. Be able to pull your reader, That's why your background study is very, very important.
Like I was saying, your introduction is very, very important in the sense that introduction is very important in the sense that most likely that's what you are going to develop first. That's what supervisor is going to check first. So if something is, if your introduction is not strong, your reader will lack the motivation to continue reading your work. So it's very, very important that we put a lot of effort in our introduction, especially our background to the study, our problem of statements, our objective. I think I touched on the importance of objective yesterday. And your objective must be very, very sound. Your objective must be very, very strong in the sense that your objective, your work is going to be built on your objective. Your literature review it will reflect your objective. Your research instruments it will reflect your objective. Even if you are going to be using a secondary data, your secondary data is going to reflect your objective. The kind of data you're going to be looking for is going to be based on the objective you you develop. So your chapter one is very, very important. So it's practically lays the foundation for your work. So it's more like the heart of your work. Like I said here, I said every chapter, every other chapter, including your questionnaire, analysis, and recommendation, flows from your chapter one. Every chapter, including your questionnaire, your analysis, your recommendation, it flows from your chapter one. It flows from your chapter one. So um I, I mentioned the structure for the chapter one. Yes. So this is basically the component of your chapter one: background to the study, statement of problem, objective of the study, research question, hypothesis, significance, scope. So I'm going to be telling us what each of them is all about. Um, so background to the study. The purpose of background study is to provide context and understand about your research topic, where it started, what others have said about it, and why like this is like a breakdown of the component of your chapter of your background to the study. You said content focus. I like to break it down in paragraphs. Typically, your first paragraph is to, uh, you know, we mentioned constructs yesterday, the independent constructs, dependent constructs. So typically, your first paragraph should give some context even before we talk about any of your constructs. So your background study will touch on all your constructs, and then it will end with like a little bit of significance and a touch of gap. You know, your background study is all encompassing of a lot. So your first paragraph is mainly supposed to talk about some context to your work. Let's say we are talking about the effect of employee motivation on productivity in selecting parts in a learning, something like that. I'm trying to think of another topic we can use that is more interesting. Let's say we are saying the effect of COVID-19 or um, trying to look for an interesting health topic, the effect of COVID-19 on immunization of, I don't even know if what I'm saying makes sense. Just the effect of COVID-19 on I'm talking about the topic, not the concept I'm trying to teach. The effect of COVID-19 on immunization of pregnant women in Ikeja local government, something like that. So background to study should touch on context, should talk on the context of um, immunization and so can start with something like in the last and this thing I'm saying now is just to give us some conceptual foundation on how it's supposed to look like. Because we're in an era whereby it's not as hard as it used to be. Writing a lot of in those years, if I want to write background to the study, it might take me 3 to 4 days to finish writing just background to the study because I'm thinking hard. I'm thinking really, really hard how to put things together, how to make it make sense. But in today's world, it doesn't take that long anymore because of technology, because of advancement in things. So you want to touch on context of COVID-19, context of immunization, context of pregnant women, context of your case study. Yes, I mentioned independence, dependent constructs, and case study. So your background to the study will touch on the context of all those things. Try to supply as much context as possible. If your context is Africa, if your context is Nigeria, sometimes in in PhD thesis, for instance, I remember some agencies are written. They are big on context. So even if my context is Nigeria, they still want me to talk about some of the prevailing happenings of that thing a little bit in Africa, in West Africa, then I talk about it in Nigeria. Those are the things that will make your background to the study to be bulky. Like for PhD, background to the study alone, it can be 5 pages. Just background to the study alone. Background to the study is to be looking like they are doing literature review, just background to the study because you're trying to logically provide trying to logically provide as much context as possible to the study you are researching on and the problem you are trying to solve and stuff like that. So your background study is mainly about supplying context, but to make it easy, said um, you break it down to you talk if a paragraph should talk about your independent constructs, another paragraph should talk about your dependent construct. You're supplying context individually. Uh, then another paragraph will link the two construct together. So another paragraph we now highlight the uniqueness of your study, like the significance of your study, and like overarching aim. Even though you are still going to talk about those things separately in other section, but yeah, trying to as much as possible capture a lot of things because you are not sure you are not sure if they will have time to go through everything, every details of your work. So you are trying to impress as much as possible in your background to the study. So like, okay, this thing is looking interesting. Let me go and see this person's objective. You're now reading your objectives, making sense, it's pulling them in. So by the time they are pulled in enough, they are invested. They want to know, okay, what is going to I'm interested in in what is going to be the outcome of this study and stuff like that. Um so yeah, to make it easy, you can do first paragraph, talk about your independent process, second paragraph, talk about your dependent process, third, find a way to link both of them together, fourth, talk about the significance of your like the urgency of your like not the significant that has its own separate section, but you just talk about it. And as you are doing all those things, you are referencing, you are providing logical sense and all that. And then you talk about the uniqueness of your study and the overarching theme. Then So in this first one, you touch on some gaps, and gap is you talking about why your study matters in the scheme of things, why what your study is talking about that other people might have ignored. So that is more like an overview of your background to study. So I said tips for writing an excellent background to study. Read at least 5 to 10 journals on your topic. And these days, reading has become easy. So some months back, I did I did a training, I did a course with some people. I organized it for some people. So in that training, some of the people in that training, I can see them on this call. So in that training, I went very, very deep into research, like into like it's more like a crash course in learning research, like everything. So I went very, very deep into it. So I did it was a two series. So the first series was traditional. I taught traditional way of researching, like traditional way of researching. Like if there was no technology, if there was no AI, how to research. If something happened to AI today and AI crashed, that was what I discussed, like how to research traditionally. Then the second part was how to research with AI, and I went deep into different components, into academic integrity, um, the ethics of academia, how to use AI in the most ethical way. I went so deep. I touched on many details, a lot. I had sessions on referencing, on reference manager, on almost all the AI tools that you can think of. I went on I did it. ChatGPT, Perplexity, you know, Elicit, a lot of AI tools. So I touched on LM notes. So the reason I am remembering that part is because I said read up to 5 to 10 journals. So before, if I want to read 10 journal, if I want to read 10 articles on a topic, I will open. I have, I have, I have different um PDF reader for my system. So there's one that I love. There's so different PDF readers. They serve different purposes. There's a PDF reader I use for personal um books. Like just it's not necessarily research related. There's one I use for search because it's easy to go from tab to back to tab to be comparing. So could remember those days, that particular PDF, I can open 30 journals in one. So 30, I'll sit down, I'll be reading one by one, one by one, and be highlighting, making notes. I will that those years it was very, very tedious. So I'll be writing down some critical points and I'll be so this this is one of my this this is one of the notes I currently use. I take it around almost everywhere because if there's an idea that comes to my mind, I quickly scribble it down on a particular work. But in those years, it was more serious. So if I'm reading like this, I'll open different notes. I'll be writing, okay, I got this source from this. I will bracket it and write the name of the source so that when I'm developing my drafts, I can remember which source belonged to which. That was how we used to do it. But right now, it's very, very easy. Such a way that I can read 30 journals. I can read 30 journals in 30 minutes. Now we understand everything. So I put it there in that training. And it was when I discovered it, it was mind blowing. I'll be like, wow, this thing has made my life easy. And I'm not kidding. I can read 30 journals in 30 minutes or less, and I'm going to understand everything. I can, I can. can convert, or I can summarize all the journals into an audio that I can listen to give me like an overview concept, to give me like an overview concept of what that topic is talking about. So, and then all the information is available to me in one screen, like, and I can poke into different sources, just, and I can be typing and be asking questions that will pull me in. So I discussed all those things. I showed it in that course. So, but let's move on. I touched on it because of this, because it's important that even, and one of the things I discussed in that course is that even in the days of in this day of AI is not here to make us lazy. It is here to make us more efficient. I could remember those days. If I want to write chapter 1 to 3, it's at if I'm very, very fast, I'm going to, okay, yeah, because of the nature of the work I do, I've developed speed a long time ago. So if I want to write chapter 1 to 3 in a week, I'm not going to sleep a lot. And there were days that you just sit down on your screen and nothing is coming, literally. And it's not that you don't know what to do. Nothing is coming, the idea is not flowing, but with AI now, that's broken that barrier. It means that even if I have like the faintest idea of what I want to do, there's a device that can help me to flesh it out. Even if I don't know the whole picture of what I want to do, just a single, the faintest idea can help me with the rest of the journey. But that time, remember, it was so difficult that time. I would just sit down in front of my system, sit down, nothing may come, not literally nothing might come in those times. But the funny thing is, by the time it decides to come, it will just come flowing in. I can I can finish I can finish an entire chapter in one day. The idea will just come pouring in. So that time you always have to be on guys, like it's like a wave. Sometimes you want to write, you just sit down in front of your system, nothing is coming, nothing. You are just blank. Then I could remember the drama of those years. Like deadline is staring you on the face and nothing is coming. You feel like, God, what am I going to do now? You just sit down there. You just sit down there hoping, like you're waiting for it. It's like it's more like inspiration is like it's more like a visitor that time. Like, yeah, yeah. And everybody in that era understand what I'm saying. But we have passed that era. It doesn't happen anymore now because there's a system, there's a way, there's a system you can go through that doesn't happen to you anymore. So content generation has become easier than it used to be. So I did that, and I think each of those two series, it was like 6 modules each. And I was spending an average of 1 hour plus per module, and it was well packed. So I'm saying that in case you are interested in that, you can reach out to me, and then I can send you the details for it in your mail. So it's quite mind blowing. So avoid storytelling, stay factual. I was saying yesterday that research writing and essay writing is not the same. In research writing, you're not it's not storytelling. You are not writing a blog. It's not a social media post. You are not trying to it's not fictional writing. Everything you are writing must be evidence based. You are not writing your imagination. You are not writing your ideals. You are not writing what you think should happen. That's not what you are writing. You are writing what is really happening. And that's one of the things research have taught me. Research has helped me to be able to stay grounded in facts, to stay grounded in evidence, not in ideals. Research is not it's not about ideas, it's about finding out what is happening. Even if what is happening, even if you disagree with what is happening, it's not about your disagreement or your agreement. It's about staying factual. You are not trying to. That's why different in that course. So I described different journals that are um that are credible. It's not every journal that's credible. There are journals that they call it peer-reviewed journals. Peer-reviewed journals are journals that have been verified by multiple sources, multiple people, and uh, and there's a way you also detect uh, bias. So you don't want to use journals that have an agenda. You know, when I started doing research, I realized that there are reports that you will read that has a lot of statistics, but those statistics were fabricated. They are not necessarily true, but they feel like if they put the statistics, it creates a it creates an aura of believability. So they do that just to mislead people. So one of the skills you have to harm yourself with, and that was one of the things I was hammering in that course, is critical thinking, uh, critical thinking, pattern recognition, your ability to be able to pull pieces of information together to make sense of them. It's part of it's part of the skills of a researcher. So so move from general to specific. Yeah, that's what background study. You are moving from a broader scope, then you are narrowing it down. So that's why typically the last paragraph of your background study is going to zero in on the aim of your study, on the aim of your study. This after all has been said and done, start to zoom in. Like this particular study is addressing this, is addressing that, something like that. So you use in-text citations to show evidence of reading. And the background with a clear link to your topic. Yes, you have to link it to something. So it's a statement of problem. The purpose of statement of problem is to describe the gap or issue your study seeks to investigate. This is the why behind your research. So structure of a good problem to study, structure of a structure of a good problem or statement is start with what is known, briefly summarize existing findings or policies, identify what is not known, highlight the gap, weakness or contradiction, show why it matters, explain the consequence of leaving it unresolved, conclude with your studies, indicate how your research intends to address this issue. So um second of problem is you finding, okay, every topic, the aim of every topic is to solve an existing problem somewhere. That is the aim of every topic. The aim of your research topic in the space is to solve a problem somewhere. So, and you do this by gathering evidences that this problem is worth solving. You gather the evidence from other people's study, what other people have said about the problem, and then statistics too matters. Statistics from and one of the things I tell people is when it comes to statistics, one of the things I discussed in the training I was talking about is um, where to find your sources. And one of the places to find your sources is notable organizations like World Health Organization, World Bank, economic ECOWAS, um, economic something economic forum, um, major statistical bodies. So these are organizations that deal with data. They fund research that gathers data. So if you are going to be pulling statistics, you want to pull your statistics from notable sources, not from LinkedIn, because if you are searching something, part of the search Google will bring for you is LinkedIn posts, LinkedIn write-ups, not from LinkedIn, except the person is an authority, maybe a government official or something. But you won't, and not Wikipedia. Wikipedia is not. a credible source for research. You can use it for personal consumption. Wikipedia is not a credible source at all. So, common mistakes, writing vague statement like this study will solve unemployment. No. Instead, identify specific organizational or contextual issues relevant to your topic. Section 3, objective to study. So, what I like to just touch on in objective is okay. Um, depending. Okay, here I wrote general objective, specific objective. General objective typically means aim. Your aim to the study. That's your aim to the study. Not like maybe 3 lines, like overarching aim of your study. That you draw your aim of your study from your topic. It's more like you are paraphrasing your topic. That is the aim of the topic. Then the specific of the that's the that's the aim of the study. The specific objective is you breaking down your 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 aim into measurable goals. Like I said yesterday, derived from your constant and variables. And if you have seen the video I shared today, I have talked about it, linking everything together. Uh, measurable measurable goals. Like, and then what I normally tell people is there's a way your objective should be framed. Your objective should not just you cannot just say your objective like that. Your objective, it has to be framed in a logical, acceptable manner. So there are the phrases you use to start your objective, something like to assess, to examine, to determine, to evaluate, to measure, to evaluate, to explore. So that those are the languages you use to start your objective. Then you link it to a an independent constant uh, an independent variable and a dependent variable, something measurable. For instance, to assess the effect of salary and financial incentives on employee productivity, to examine the influence of working conditions on staff efficiency, to determine the role of recognition and promotion on employee output. So, what I said yesterday is okay. Your work starts from something broad. That's your topic, and your topic is a component of independent constructs. And then you now break down your independent constructs to independent variables. You break down your dependent constructs to dependent variables. So the variables you adopt are the measurable terms you want to use in achieving your goal, in solving the problem you have identified, something like that. So you bring the combination of everything into your objectives. That is what is going to form your objective. So if you're able to, that's why it's very, very important that if you can take your time to watch the video I shared with us to understand the concept of construct and variables is very, very important. Without understanding it, research might look very, very difficult and shaky. So, yeah. So verbs to use for research objective. So if you are trying to describe, to examine, analytical, to determine, or to measure, okay, to determine, to evaluate, to analyze, to measure, something like that. And when I'm covering this kind of topic in more details, I tell people that the phrase you use, it will reflect the kind of methodology you are using to. For instance, okay, I'm trying to stay on course without confusing us in any way. Um, okay, let me just touch a little bit on methodology, a little bit. So we have different types of methodology. Um, we have quantitative, we have qualitative, uh, primary research. So we are using quantitative, the language you use will be different from the language you use when you are using qualitative. Quantitative is what you can quantify in terms of numbers. You know, In quantitative, we deal more with statistics, we deal more with charts. In qualitative, we deal more with um, subjective information. We try to capture feelings, we try to capture opinion, we try to capture perception. So in that one, that's where we use interviews as from our data collection. We use interview. Sometimes we use content analysis, whereby we analyze content. So those are qualitative. Qualitative means something subjective. Quantitative, yeah. Somebody saying survey. Quantitative is survey, questionnaire, something you can quantify. So if your study is going to be a quantitative study, the phrase you use in your objective will be different from the phrase you use in your objective when you are using qualitative. So when you're using quantitative, your phrase should capture that you are trying to that you are quantifying something, you are measuring something. So that's where that's where you use analytical phrases. You use analytical phrases like to determine, to evaluate, to analyze, to compare. You can say to measure, to so but if you are using um descriptive, you use language like to describe, to explore, to assess, to examine. You can use to examine for both actually, because you can examine in quantitative too, but we are using qualitative, we use to examine. Like to examine means you are looking at something critically, you are looking at something closely, like you are looking into fine details of something. So explorative, to investigate. Explorative means that probably yeah, your research is in maybe intercultural, something like that. Intercultural or inter it's cutting across different demography, different age groups, different psychography. So that one is exploratory. Okay, somebody is asking, can a research have all the types of um methodology? Yeah, if you are using mixed method, yeah, it can capture it. If your research is mixed method, sure. So the subject of methodology is an interesting topic. I love to talk about it. I love to talk about it because I struggled with it when I started. When I started writing, I did not understand methodology for a long time. So when I started writing, I used to do, yeah, mixed method. Mixed method, that's this method captures qualitative and quantitative. So yeah, I use both. If if the nature of the nature of your study permits it. There are nuances into this thing. There are topics that the best thing to use is just quantitative because they are broad in nature. And some of them, the best thing to use is to use both because um, quantitative serve as collecting general opinion, qualitative serve as collecting individual opinion. And when you are collecting individual opinion, you want to be sure that the individuals you are sampling, they are individuals that are well knowledgeable in that area. That's why you sample people that have authority in that field, people that have experience in that field and stuff like that. But that's not what we are talking about today. So research question, I always say that your research question must be drawn from your objective. That means if your objective is 4, your research question 2 must be 4, and it must be drawn from your objective in such a way that your objective 1 and your research question 1 must be the same, in the sense that you just turn your objective 1 to a question form. That will be your um, research question 1. So there must be uniformity. So, for instance, these are objective 1 in our example, to assess the effect of salary and financial incentives on employee productivity. So our research question could be to could be to what extent does salary affect to what extent does salary and financial incentive affect employee productivity? That will be our research question. It means our variables are still maintained. Our variables are still intact, something like that. So same thing goes with other objectives. So um, your research objectives and your research question, they must align. They must not be disparate. Your objective one cannot be saying something, and your research question one saying something else. There must be alignment. So just like we have phrases we use for just like we have phrases we use for our research objective, we have phrases we use for our research questions. So phrases like to what extent, how does, what is the relationship between, what effect does, something like that. So and it's not an open-ended question. Your research question cannot be an open-ended question. It must be closed-ended. It must be measurable. It must have measurable variables. Just like it's the same for your objective. It must be measurable. So yeah, this example I started to assess the effect of salary on employee productivity. So the question will be, to what extent does salary affect employee productivity in selected banks in your case study? Objective is to evaluate the effect of recognition on staff performance. Your research question will be, what is the relationship between recognition and employee productivity? So stuff like that. So checklist must reflect your objective. It must focus on measurable elements, uses clear and concise language. So your hypothesis, there are two different kind of hypothesis. We have null hypothesis and we have alternative hypothesis. Null hypothesis is more like is negative. Alternative hypothesis is positive. So okay, for example, salary does not significantly influence employee productivity. That is a null hypothesis. Alternate hypothesis is salary significantly influences employee productivity. So depending on your school, depending on your school or department, that will determine which one you will use. So, but by default, people generally tend to use, but by default, people tend to use null hypothesis by default. If no instruction was given by default, people tend to use null hypothesis. And then hypothesis, some schools we want the hypothesis to be your chapter 2, some we want it to be your chapter 3, but generally it's in chapter 1. And some schools don't ask for it at all. And it is not all kind of works that have hypothesis. If your work is qualitative, you don't need an hypothesis. It's only quantifiable works that can have hypothesis. You get. So and hypothesis is more like a statement that has not been tested. So let me give you like an example of like hypothesis. Hypothesis, according to in science, there are different layers of knowledge in science. So hypothesis is more like the weakest. Then we have theory. Then we have law. Hypothesis, theory, and law. Hypothesis is a statement that has not been tested. So when it has been tested and it passes the test, it will become a law. I'm just saying science. I'm not saying in research now. You get it? So hypothesis in ranking in science, in scientific discovery, hypothesis is the lowest. We have theory, then we have law. So hypothesis is just like it's just like what you set out to. It's more like a statement you have that sets you out on a quest. So after it has been proven to be true, to become a theory. So after it has been universally accepted to become a law, something like that. But in research, hypothesis, by the time you are formulating your hypothesis, you don't know if it is true or not. The hypothesis is more like a statement you have in mind that you are trying to prove in your analysis. So by the time you collected your samples and your data and all that, so you test your hypothesis. There's a way you test your hypothesis. You can test it. I don't know if you have had terms like ANOVA, chi-square, regression, correlation. Those are the things you use to test hypothesis. So if you are using null hypothesis, which is negative, I told you null hypothesis is negative. Alternative hypothesis is positive. So if you are using null hypothesis, for instance, and your null hypothesis proved to be true, that means your hypothesis is significant. You get. So that means if you say salary does not significantly influence employee productivity, by the time you are testing your hypothesis, and that was the case, that means your hypothesis stand. You get. So that's more like the idea. And like I said, the hypothesis should mirror each hypothesis should mirror one objective and one research. That means everything must take after each other. And in some schools, if you're having 4 objectives, that means you're going to have 4 hypotheses. But in some schools, you're only testing one grand hypothesis. Your hypothesis is one, no matter your number of objectives. And before I forget, the standard of objective generally, you cannot have. There are sometimes I see some people, maybe somebody have done their work and they probably they want me to do the analysis for them, and they send it. I'm seeing like 11 search questions. How? You will see them. They have 4 objectives, 11 research questions. The research question is not it's not a questionnaire. So like we say, it must be measurable. That means the number 2 must be something that is visible. Generally, your research question and objective should not be more than 3 to 5 maximum. The ideal number is 4 or 3. So your research question cannot be 7, cannot be 8. That does not make sense. You test something that is core to your study. It should not be more than 3, 4, occasionally 5. Then depending on the word count, depending on the volume of your work and stuff like that. These are advanced conversations. So significance of the study talks about who your study affects, stakeholders. Every study does not affect everybody. For instance, in public health, your topic can be addressing parents, it might be addressing policy makers, it might be addressing institutional authorities, educational higher institutional authorities, stuff like that. So it's more like he's talking about stakeholders. Your study might be affecting your field in terms of contributing to the general body of knowledge. So your significance of study is talking about who benefits from your study, who are the people that benefit from your study. So the reason is important is because your study is not just supposed to sit. It's in Africa that research sit on the desk of lecturers, and then maybe they burn it at some point. Research is supposed to lead to a meaningful it's supposed to lead to a meaningful conclusion. It's supposed to lead to recommendation that can change lives, that can move society forward. That is what research is supposed to do. Somebody must benefit from your research. At the end of the day, by the time you have conducted the research for 6 months, somebody should be able to benefit from the research, from your discovery. So, but it is in Nigerians, people just, especially undergraduate, you just want to do your research, you just want to do your PhD so that you can graduate. You are not doing it to gain knowledge. You are not doing it, you are not doing it, you are not having anybody in mind to do your research, which is very, very wrong. Your research should have somebody in mind. Your research uh should should touch somebody. It should benefit someone and all that. So um that's what significance of study uh it's all about. How to write it, identify. It might be government, it might be policy makers, it might be business owners, it might be um certain body, maybe labor union, something like that. Let's say we are a political scientist, something like that. It might be if we are in mass communication, it might be social media managers, it might be radio stations, it might be whatever. So maybe you are researching on the effect of social media on academic performance. Because your stakeholders might be parents, maybe teachers, it might be students themselves and all that. So you identify your stakeholders. So and you explain how your study will help each stakeholder. So that is what. So for instance, it might be students, organization, government, researchers, society. So for student provides reference material for future. Help you. So stuff like that. So the next one, scope of your study. This one is very, very important. Uh, okay. The scope of your study is important because um your work you cannot scope of your study gives your work boundary. It gives your work meaningful limitation. It's just like scope of study is more like you went to buy a piece of land. So after buying a piece of land, they withdraw your boundary for you. Okay, this is where your land starts from. This is where it ends. That's more like a scope of so that when you want to start project, you're not encroaching on other people's property. So scope of your study gives your work a measurable boundary because you don't have all the time to carry out your research. You don't have the budget to carry out your research. You don't have the um so you don't have all the time. You don't have all the time. You don't have all the budget. That's majorly why scope of study is important. So your scope can be um it can be it can be place, it can be a place, it can be your methodology, it can be time frame. Yes, your scope can be it can be time frame, in terms of um, your scope can be your scope can be it can be time frame, it can be it can be it can be variables and all that. But your scope is telling your reader that okay, this person knows what they are doing. It means it's giving your work a focus, it's giving your work a target, and it's showing that you are not researching endlessly. Your work has a focus. It has a focus. So the scope can be methodological. Yeah, this is the methodological approach you are going for. It can be a time frame in terms of the time frame that you want to use to carry out the study, and it can be a time frame in the sense that if your work is like there are study they call longitudinal study. Longitudinal study is more like a secondary data, but you are studying events across a time period. So if it's a longitudinal study, your scope can be from this particular year to this particular year, maybe from 2020 to 2025. You are studying a particular event, or it can be from 2000 to 2020. You are studying a particular event across a time. horizon. So that is longitudinal study. So your scope is just giving boundary to your work. Yeah, it can be geographical, it can be time, it can be variable. Yeah, it can be, yeah, yeah, that's what scope is all about. Definition of terms, like I said, is not everywhere, but majorly it's talking about um key terms in your work. Like if maybe a particular terminology you are using a lot in a particular in your work that is recurring a lot. So you give the definition of that terms as it pertains to your study. So it's not necessarily a general definition like that. It might be you find a definition that applies to your study. Definition of terms, one word can mean several meanings. So you give a definition that best suits the study you are going that you're writing. So some of them will require you to reference maybe where you got the definition from, and it can be your own definition. Like when people read it and they come across those terms, they can have the meaning in mind. This is what you are talking about. This is what you mean. This is what this means. This is what this word mean in the context of your study, and stuff like that. Then um, uh, chapter outline is what he's talking about. You summarizing all the chapters you are going to touch on in your study. Chapter one is for introduction. Chapter two is for literature review. Chapter three is for methodological breakdown. Chapter four is analysis. Chapter five is for discussion of findings. Chapter six is for recommendation or whatever. So depending on the number of chapter your work is going to be covered. So it's giving um, that insight. So before we move on, do we have question? We have question because I want to touch on chapter three. I think somebody has been asking question. Okay, can scope can the scope of study determine the methodology used in the research? Can the scope of study determine the methodology? You should have determined your methodology before. Okay, after you okay, this is the thing. In the moment that you are formulating your topic, you should be thinking of your methodology in that moment too. So it is not your scope that should inform your methodology. Rather, it is your methodology that should inform your scope. You get? It's a methodology that should inform your scope. Your scope should flow from your methodology, your methodological choice. So yeah, it's I guess that is like I think you want to ask a second question. So I just want to quickly take us through chapter two. Chapter two is interesting. Um yeah, okay. Another question. How do you know the research hypothesis based on your methodology? I've said your hypothesis should flow from your research question and your research objectives. That's where your hypothesis should come from. But if you are just having just one hypothesis, then the hypothesis can come from your topic. If you are using just one hypothesis, I mean your hypothesis can come from your case as more like your general objective. So uh, you notice the first objective there is talking about salary and financial incentives on employee productivity. So hypothesis is more like you are linking two variables. You are looking at the correlation between two variables. Our variable from our objective to our question has been, at least for the first objective, is has been salary and employee productivity. So it's the same thing here too. So we are saying there's no significant influence, or you can say there's no significant. You can say there's no significant influence, or there's no significant relationship, depending on what you are testing. You know, this is another conversation. Depending on what you are testing, if it is correlation you want to test, and things like that. You want to take correlation between two variables. So like there's no significant relationship between salary and employee productivity. That means you are saying that when you increase somebody's salary, it does not affect their productivity. That's nothing to do with their productivity. That is the hypothesis you are formulating. Then you go and collect your samples, you go and collect your data. So your hypothesis should inform, rather your hypothesis should inform your questionnaire. When you are developing your questionnaire, the hypothesis you want to test will determine how you structure your questionnaire. You have to develop your questionnaire in such a way that it helps you to test your hypothesis when you get to that point. And all that. All right, so let's talk about the chapter 2 as quickly as we can. Um, all right. Chapter 2 is one of the most important uh, aspect of any research work. It carries one of the highest marks. Well, according to my own experience so far, chapter 2 and chapter 4 carries the highest mark in any work because chapter 2 takes more rigor, takes more analytical skills in piecing different opinions, in piecing different people's opinion, different findings, piecing it together and arranging it in methodological steps. So chapter 2, it carries a lot of votes in the pot of soup of research. So chapter 2 and chapter 4, they carry the highest vote as far as your research paper is concerned. The third in that order is methodology and all that. So chapter 2 is very, very important. So chapter 2 basically it has four main components: conceptual review, theoretical review, and empirical review. So it has those three components. Oh, and the fourth component is uh, gap in literature. So I might not follow what I wrote here. So I'm just going to just explain it. So your conceptual review. So this is basically the structure of your chapter 2: introduction, conceptual review, theoretical, and empirical review. So introduction is just to talk about what your chapter is going to be talking about, like to touch on. So it's not always long. Like I said, introduction is not always more than 5 to 6 lines. Maybe like uh, this chapter critically reviews uh, existing literature. You can mention your topic, and it covers the literature. It covers the conceptual review. You can briefly talk on the conceptual review you're talking about. Mention them if you like. It covers the conceptual review. Um, Talks about two main theoretical review: theory one, theory two. Then it's critically analyzed 10 empirical reviews and identify gaps in literature. Your introduction might not be more than that, just 5 to 6 lines. It's not always much, except they are looking for, except, and one of the things I used to tell people is that when you want to write your own research yourself, it's always good to get a sample from your department. Not just anyhow sample, a sample of somebody that passed. Because if you are using a sample of somebody that failed, most likely if you follow that sample, you will fail too. So if you are getting a sample, you have to be sure that the person passed. If there's a way you can find out the score of the person. So if you have a sample, it will help you to be able to know what structure to follow with your own work. But if there's no if you cannot access any sample, that's why I I I I am highlighting critical components. At least you still write it, to still fly, or at least your supervisor can guide you like, okay, you need this, replace it with this and all that. Can guide you to do the right thing. And that is what I'm going to be talking about uh, next tomorrow, on how to get the most of the relationship with your supervisor. So okay, yeah, this is an example. The chapter reviews relevant issues on employee motivation and productivity. It presents the conceptual clarification of key concepts such as motivation, productivity, and job satisfaction. It also discuss the theoretical foundation guiding the study. It reviews empirical findings from previous scholars and highlights the identified gaps the current study intends to fill. So this is an example of introduction or preamble. So conceptual review, section 2, the purpose to refine, to break down and explore the meaning of all major concepts in your topic. Conceptual review is built around your construct, your variables, and important concepts that appear in your objective. So like the word concept, like the word stand, conceptual review, so it's dealing with concept. And you can coin your concept from your variables depending on your topic. So if your topic is talking about maternal mortality rates, you have to talk about the concept of maternal mortality rates. And the conceptual review can link two constructs together. Like you are looking at how one construct rub on the other. Then you get journals to fill in the blanks for you. So I don't know. There are places I've talked so much on this, how to get journals for it. I don't know if we have enough time to touch on that. So, um, conceptual reviews, okay, example concept of independent concept, concept of dependent concept, subconcepts and variable. That's variable. Relationship between independent. So that's what I'm saying. Any additional concept relevant to your study. Example. We are dealing with this topic, the effect of employee motivation and productivity in selecting what's in your case study. So concept of employee motivation, that is one concept. We talk about definition, types, factors, importance, blah, blah, blah. Concept of employee productivity. So variables under motivation. Okay. So relationship between motivation and productivity. So what I used to tell people, when you are developing your concept must reflect all your objectives. Like each concept must reflect all your objectives. The reason is that when you are doing your analysis, you are still going to corroborate your findings with existing literature. And where are you going to get the existing literature from? You are not getting new literature per se. You are coming back to your chapter 2 to see what somebody has said on your in relation to your current findings, and you corroborate it with your chapter 2. So you are meant to corroborate your chapter 4 with your chapter 2. So that's why your conceptual review must reflect your your objectives. So that means if you're having 4 objectives, ideally you should have four or more conceptual reviews that is touching on, that is saying something about each of your. So basically all the variables in your objective should be covered in one way or the other, so that you can have materials to corroborate with in your chapter 4. So that is conceptual review, and your conceptual review you have to reference a lot. It's reference intensive. You have to reference a lot. So unfortunately, we are not going to be talking about reference managers. So I talked about reference managers. There are different types of reference managers. You can go and explore them on your own. We have MyBeep, we have Mendeley, we have Zotero, we have site templates. What is the job of reference manager? The job of reference manager helps you to keep your references well organized in a place, such a way that you're not at the end of your work, you're not looking for where you got what at the end of the day, and you're misplacing references all around. So your reference manager it helps you to keep your references organized in one place. And then there's also what we call referencing style. There's what we call referencing style. Referencing style can be upper 7, upper 8, it can be Harvard, it can be Vancouver, it can be, we have plenty referencing style. So every reference manager also have you can set it to your preferred referencing style. It will help you organize it and format it. So you don't have to be you don't have to be typing your references manually, which is you cannot be so sure that you will get it right sef. So these ones they will help you to organize they will help you to organize your references and help you to format it in your preferred referencing style. So that's why reference managers are so important. So like what the training I was talking about, I covered it. It was an entire module where I talk about references, reference styles, you know, how to how to use each. I covered three main reference managers: Mendeley, Zotero, and MyBeat. How to use all those three. In the occasions where when each of them is preferred. So I covered it. So when you understand it, you can easily um and all these reference managers they have in-text citations, they have bibliographies, so they can help you to generate in-text citations. They make your work very easy. So conceptual review, depending on your word count, each of these concepts can be 500 words each. So that's why you should understand. If you understand traditional research, you can now use it. You can now if you know how to use AI too, it makes things easy for you. So there are myths about AI that there are still fears that people have around AI that I demystified in that particular material that I produced. So it's like that. So the next one is writing tips. Use subheadings. Use subheadings for clarity. Define concepts using journals or textbooks, not random blogs. Write in your own words, then cite the author. So that's the essence of that's what academic writing is all about. So that means that you read something in a material does not mean you have to cite it word for word. That is what they call plagiarism. So I touch on the concept of plagiarism too. So when you read something in a material, you still have to paraphrase it in your own words, and you still have to reference the person. So you have to write in your own words, then you cite the author. Avoid writing definitions only. Explain and expand on concepts. Use clarity. Okay, clarity, not complexity. Avoid complexity. Just try as much as possible to be clear. So what is theoretical review? The purpose of theoretical review is to provide the academic theories that support your study. I normally tell people that there are plenty theories out there. There's no work you want to talk about that doesn't have a theory. Every field have their own unique theories. So we have theory of planned behavior in social sciences, and planned behavior also apply for health sciences. Planned behavior, we have theory of motivation. Abraham Maslow, we have reason action, different theories, a lot of theories, plenty theories. So you find theories that are relevant to your study and you adopt it. So your theory answers why should this construct be related? What established principles explain your topic. So it's more like your theory, it validates what you are trying to do. Your work is not sound until you embed in the theories, existing theories. So how to choose theories? You should choose 2 to 3 relevant, credible theories that relate to. Okay, this is an example of, I'm using the example of the topic we've been using. We've been using a business topic since we began. So, for instance, the topic we choose, so behavior, motivation, behavior, organization, performance, human interaction, decision making. So, you choose topic, you choose theory based on your topic, what your topic is talking about. So, example of employee motivation topic. Relevant theories could include Maslow hierarchy of needs theory, Eisenberg two-factor theory, equity theory, theory of reason action, McLenan's need theory. So every field have their own theory. There are plenty theories. And the good thing now is in those years when I'm writing, I used to ask Google. I would type my topic on Google and I would ask it. I should give me theories I can use, theories I can Google. So it will give me, and I will be reading those. I'll be reading those theories one by one to see the one that is the best fit. But right now, ChatGPT can do that for you. ChatGPT can recommend theories for you. Then you develop it. So in case you are making notes, the key the key components of theoretical review is proponent, proponent, assumption, criticism and relevance. Those are the core components of theoretical review. Proponent is talking about the person that propounded the theory. There's always somebody that propounded the theory. It's either a person or an organization. Assumption is talking about what the theory is talking about, like the core concept of the theory. That's assumption, the assumption of the theory. Every theory has an assumption. Criticism. What are the criticism? Every theory no theory is perfect. That's why you cannot have one theory for your work. You have one theory, then another theory that complement the first theory. So ideally, you should have, although there are some works that it's just only one theory they will ask you for, like one theory that captures your work. But normally you have between like one or you have like 2 theories. You have one main one, you have one sub theory. So you have component, assumption, criticism, and relevance. Relevance is talking about how relevant it is. You have to connect it to how relevant it is to the work you have studied, the work you are writing, and all that. So you have to find the theory that best goes with your work. So yeah, introduce the theory, explain its components, link the theory to your topic, explain why it is relevant to your analysis, and all that. So the fourth one is empirical review. I hope you've been able to get the difference between conceptual and theoretical. The difference is wide. Empirical review and conceptual review. This is where people mix things together. So empirical review is okay. The purpose is mainly to see what others have found out. Conceptual review is dealing with concepts, not findings. Empirical review is dealing with findings. More like you are summarizing findings of people that have written on a similar subject to what you are writing. That's empirical review. So remember that time I used to rack my brain like because I didn't understand like what is empirical, what is conceptual review. Remember that time when I started writing, I used to do copy and paste for my conceptual review because I don't even know how to come up with it. Over time, I was able to understand it. And then empirical review. Empirical review is like okay, empirical review must be recent, relevant, structured, summarized, not copied. So the component of empirical review, like um, the author and the year of that study, what the researcher studied, the method they use, their findings, and how it relates to your study. Those are the components of the empirical review. So to summarize it for you, empirical review is more like an abstract. Just If you see a journal, just go and look at the abstract. That's the empirical review that is staring you in the face. So you just look at the abstract, summarize it. That's why I said summarize, don't copy. Summarize the abstract. That is the empirical review for a particular journal. That abstract. So talk about so an empirical review, it must be studies that are related to your study, what you are writing on, people that are written on what you are written on. So so I said it must be recent, it must be relevant, it must be structured. So structured in the sense that you have to structure it in a particular order, maybe chronological order or thematic order. You know, your empirical review can be chronological, it could be thematic. That means you arrange it in the order of chronology means in order of years. Starting from maybe you can organize it in such a maybe from recent years to later years or from later years to recent years. However you want to organize it, you must ensure that is in a particular order. You cannot say 2020, then you jump to 2025. You are talking about 2022, then you jump to 2010. It must be in a order. Maybe you talk about 2020, 2020, 2022, 2021. Okay, just in order. Maybe it's going up or it's coming down. You have to discuss in order. Um, so that time I'll just go and look at one. When I started, I used to do copy and paste because that time, especially in some schools, that time they don't have Turnitin. So I just go and copy abstracts. I'll just copy one abstract, copy like 10 abstracts. Empirical review is set. But over time I understand how to integrate it. Like and I was developing flow. Like it was making sense to me. But basically, for empirical review, you will see it in the abstract. The year, what the researcher studied in terms of their aim or the topic, their methodology, like what the methodology they use in terms of sample size, in terms of their is it correlation they use, it's in terms of the people they sampled, in terms of the demography they sampled, so sample size, what is their findings? Then the last one is your opinion. How does it relate to your study? So that's empirical review. Then, okay, this is an example. Adeyemi 2020 investigated the relationship between motivation and productivity among employees in Lagos. The study found that, okay, among employees in Lagos is too vague. How many employees? So this one is just coined as for an example. How many employees? Can be like, okay, investigate the relation between employee motivation and productivity among 620 employees in Lagos. And then, like I said, Lagos is so broad. Nobody just, where in Lagos, I'm sure it will be in the study. So this one is just like an example. The study found that financial incentives had a significant positive effect on work output. This supports the present study's position that salary and monetary rewards influence employee productivity, stuff like that. So that's why your conceptual review must come first before your empirical review, because your opinion will be formed by what you have discovered from doing your conceptual review. That's why by the time you have done your empirical review, you already have some opinion about the work you are doing. Like similarly, Musa 2022 examine intrinsic motivation in Nigerian banks and discover that recognition and promotion improve long-term performance. So if you want to continue, like also Adamu 2023 in his study, the impact of of blah 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 blah, like methodology, then his findings and stuff like that. So what makes a good empirical review? At least 10 to 15 studies, undergraduate research. Studies must be from like you're not doing post studies, more like maximum of 10 years gap. And some of you, they will give you the number of years that it must not exist. Some people it is 5, some people it is 8, some people it is 10. So it must not exceed 10 years gap. Like you are doing an empirical study, it must not be too long. Must relate to your variables, show contrasting findings. That means you are not just collating people that have the same opinion. You have to, you know, your examiners will call you lazy, that you are lazy. If you're like, especially if you in your conceptual reviews, if your conceptual review is talking about is tilting towards one angle, they will tell you it is not critical. Your conceptual review is critical when it is diverse, different opinions, people that disagree with each other. Somebody is saying this, another person is saying this. They'll say like, okay, they will give you a thumbs up that they are trying. So show contrasting findings, show patterns or consistencies. You get. So the last factor, which is gap in literature, the purpose is this one of the most important section in your project. It shows what past researchers did not do. Together, it shows what past researchers did not do. For instance, you are researching on a topic, even though that topic is well researched, the topic might not have been researched in your region. So that is a gap. So okay, I'm getting there. Okay, without a strong gap, your supervisor will say this topic has been overly researched. What exactly are you trying to add? So, okay. All right. Types of gaps. We have contextual gap. Most studies were done in Lagos, few in Ilorin. That's an example. Most studies have been done in Lagos, few in Abakaliki, something like that. Or most studies have been done in Ibadan. So the particular study you are studying on, it might have been well researched in a particular region, ignored in another region, and you are trying to explore that region, something like that. But it must be a region that you have access to. Remember the the case study philosophy I taught yesterday. So methodological gap. It must be maybe previous studies use quantitative method. This study uses quantitative method. Maybe, okay, previous study used qualitative method. This study uses quantitative method. So your gap can be methodological. Maybe the previous study is just, I've just used maybe either quantitative or qualitative. Your own might be trying to bridge the gap by doing the two mixed method. You get, or maybe previous studies have only carried out systematic review, something like this. So it can be a methodological gap. It can be a theoretical gap. Few studies applied Eisenberg theory in Nigerian banks. So you might want to explore a different theories entirely. It can be a variable gap. So existing studies didn't examine the effect of recognition. It might be a variable gap. Maybe that topic has been well researched, but it has only been well researched in a particular angle. Some certain angles have been ignored, and you want to pick one of those angles that have been ignored, and you want to examine it. You get. So time gap. Most studies were done before COVID-19. These studies evaluate post-pandemic impact, something like that. Or maybe most studies have been done pre-AI. We want to know how AI has affected this particular subject matter since the inception of AI and stuff like that. Examples of a strong gap statement. Although several studies have examined the relationship between the motivation and productivity, most were conducted outside Kwara State or focused on private organizations. Few studies have considered the combined effect of salary, recognition, and working condition within the context of commercial banks and learning. More so, limited studies have applied Eisenberg two-factor theory in explaining productivity within the environment. This presents a gap that the present study seeks to fill, something like that. So, and that has brought us to the end of this study for today. So, in case you have any question, let me have it. In case you have any question, anything that confuses you, anything that is not clear to you, you can let me have your question. Do you understand the concept of chapter 2? Do you understand it better? Do you understand the difference between conceptual review and empirical review? Do you understand the concept of theoretical review, gap in literature, and all that? All right. Thank you, everyone. I hope it has been okay. Someone is asking, do you have to use in-text? You mean in-text citation? Of course. Oh, where? Where in particular? Of course. Of course, you have to use in-text citation. You have to use in-text citation in every part of your work. You have to use in-text citation everywhere. That's what makes it a research. Sure. You can search for how APA looks like on Google, and you'll be able to capture the reference manager I mentioned. You can explore it on your own. If you want to understand it better, we might see what we can do about that. All right. Thank you everyone for your time. And we will meet tomorrow for the concluding part of this webinar. I hope I've been able to bring enlightenment and not confusion. I hope I've been able to be of service. So thank you everyone for your time, and we're going to see tomorrow. All right. Good night, everyone.